So good morning, students. So dear students, so myself Vasanth B. So I'm working as an assistant professor in the Department of Biochemistry, JSS College, Ooty Road. And today we'll discuss on the course title Human Physiology and Nutrition. The course code is BCB 260. Okay. So today we'll discuss the topic digestive system and digestion, absorption, transportation of carbohydrates. So introduction about the digestive system. So what this digestive system, what it contains. So we will study one by one. So that is the introduction of this digestive system. So it is also called as gastrointestinal tract, or it is also called as alimentary canal. So it is made up of a muscular tube. So it is extend from, that is it starts from, or it is initiate from the mouth and ends at to the anus. So whatever the food we taken, so which is passes through the pharynx, esophagus, stomach, small intestine and large intestine. So these are all the parts of this alimentary canal. So then what are the major function of this digestive tract? So actually it consists six major functions, so which include digestion, mechanical processing, ingestion, mechanical processing, digestion, secretion, absorption, and excretion. So we'll study one by one each. So what is this digestion? Ingestion. So ingestion occurs when the materials enter the digestive tract. So whatever the food we are taken through the mouth, so that is called ingestion, and it enters the alimentary canal via the mouth. So then mechanical process. Whatever the food we are taken through the mouth, so this will undergo mechanical process, that is my chewing and chopping. So that is crushing and shearing. So this food makes the material easier to prepare. So whatever the food which is crushing thus into smaller pieces, so this material which enter goes into the esophagus very easily and propel along the digestive tract. So then digestion. So whatever the food which is make into smaller pieces, so then which undergo digestion. So this is the chemical breakdown of this food into smaller organic fragments for the absorption by digestive epithelial cells. So then coming to secretion. So when we food enters into the digestive tract, so there will be some secretions. So what are these secretions? These secretions which help in the digestion and absorption. So these secretion include the water, acids, enzymes, buffer, and salts. These are all very helpful for the digestion and absorption, which are secreted from the stomach or intestine. So by the epithelial of the digestive tract and also glandular organs. So glandular organ means, for example, the pancreas, which secretes the enzymes and also bile salts. So then coming to absorption. So whatever the digestion takes place, that means chemical digestion takes place into smaller, this chemical which is break down into smaller pieces. So this will get absorbed. So movement of these organic substances, electrolytes, vitamins and water. So these smaller molecule, the breakdown molecule which get absorbed by these epithelial cells of the intestine and enter into the bloodstream. So across these digestive epithelial cells into the intestinal fluid or digestive tract. Then coming to excretion. So after the absorption, the remaining, so it will be get excreted, that is removal of waste product from the body fluid. The process is called defecation, removes the feces. So then coming to the move on to digestion, absorption and transportation of the carbohydrates. That means how these carbohydrates it will get digested, absorbed and which is enter into the bloodstream. That is how it will get transported. So now the coming to introduction of this one. The major source of the carbohydrates is found in the plants. So whatever the we've taken the food, mainly plant sources, so which contains carbohydrates. So whatever the we taken through the diet, the food contains carbohydrates from the plants. So these diets or these foods mainly source is glucose. So glucose is the universal fluid for human cells all over the world. That is universal. All over the world, the glucose is the main fuel for the all human beings. The glucose concentration in the body are maintained within the limits by various metabolic processes. That means after the taking of this glucose, the normal concentration of the glucose, which is maintained by several metabolic pathways. So which will come to later. So then coming to this digestion of this carbohydrates, the principal sites of this carbohydrate digestion are mouth. So that means the whatever the food we have taken through the diet, which contains carbohydrates, so that will be digested in the mouth. Initially, it will be digested in the mouth, and then later enter into the stomach and enter into the small intestine. So the second digestion of these carbohydrates, which will take place in the small intestine. The dietary carbohydrates consist of polysaccharides. So these carbohydrate which contains mainly polysaccharide, disaccharides and monosaccharides. Polysaccharide means starch, glycogen and cellulose. Disaccharides includes sucrose, maltose, lactose and monosaccharides mainly glucose and fructose. These are all the contents in the diets. Then monosaccharides need digestion prior to absorption. Uh, Whereas these disaccharides, polysaccharide must be hydrolyzed to simple sugar before their absorption. That means monosaccharides which will absorb directly, whereas these disaccharides and polysaccharides, so which will undergo breakdown, chemical breakdown, then it will convert it into monosaccharides, then it will be absorbed. So then how this polysaccharides, disaccharides and monosaccharides. So polysaccharides includes dextrine. So dextrine in the mouth, this polysaccharides, so which will clear by the salivary amylase. So then this polysaccharides which will convert into dextrine by this salivary amylase. So this dextrine enter into the stomach. There in the stomach there will not be any digestion in the stomach. So this dextrine then enter into the small intestine. So where it undergo breakdown or catabolic pathway by the pancreatic amylase, which gives rise to the dextrine, which gives rise to maltose after the pancreatic amylase digestion. So then disaccharides, which also after the breakdown, which will gives the monosaccharides. So disaccharides include maltose, sucrose, and lactoses. So monosaccharides like glucose. So after these disaccharides, which again break down or undergo catabolic pathway, which will gives to monosaccharides like glucose, fructose, galactose, and glucose. Then these monosaccharides will enter into the bloodstream, so by the absorption process. So digestion due to pancreatic amylase. Okay, so this pancreatic amylase which cleaves the alpha 1,4 linkages. Next. Okay. So the digestion, digestion due to intestinal enzymes. Enzymes responsible for the final phase of this carbohydrate digestion are located in the brush border of the membrane. Okay, so some of the enzyme which is also secreted from the intestinal. So those are all maltase, isomaltase, sucrase, lactase, and dextrinases. So this maltase enzyme, so which cleaves the disaccharides maltose into glucose into two molecules of glucose. So then isomaltase also which break down the isomaltose into two molecules of glucose. That means into monosaccharides. The sucrose which is also break down by the sucrase which gives rise to monosaccharides, glucose and fructose. Similarly, lactose is also which is cleaved by these lactase enzymes give rise to glucose and galactose, and alpha limit dextrine. So dextrinases which cleaves the glucose and maltoses. The end product of this carbohydrate digestion are glucose, fructose, galactose, so which are readily absorbed through the intestinal mucosal cells into the bloodstream. So whatever the monosaccharide which is comes after the digestion, so it will enter into the bloodstream. So it is called absorption. So this absorption of carbohydrates. Carbohydrates are absorbed as the monosaccharide from the intestinal lumen. So two mechanisms are responsible for the absorption of these monosaccharides. So one is active transport and facilitative transport. So this active transport means against the concentration gradients. So that means this glucose molecule which is moves from intestinal lumen to the bloodstream. So where there will be even though if it is high concentration in the intestinal lumen, which will be transported. So that is called active transported. That means against the concentration gradient. So that is from low glucose concentration to the high concentration. The facilitative transport with concentration gradients from higher concentration. The facilitated transport means the movement of glucose from higher concentration to the lower concentration. So then active transport. The transport of glucose and galactose across the brush border membrane of these mucosal cells occur by active transport. This active transport is an energy requiring process that requires the specific transport protein and the presence of this sodium ions. So active transport means the transport of this glucose from lower concentration to the higher concentration through the which requires the transporters. So which is present on the membrane of this intestinal luminal cells. So then what is this active transport? Sodium dependent glucose transporters. So that is SGLT1. So binds both glucose and sodium at the separate site and transport them both through the plasma membrane of the intestinal cell. So the sodium is transported down across the gradient, that is higher concentration to lower concentration, and at the same time glucose is transported against its concentration gradient. The free energy required for the active transport is obtained from the hydrolysis of ATP. That means the energy required for the transportation of this glucose, that is active transport, so which requires the energy. So by the ATP molecules, which is linked to sodium pump that expel the sodium from the cell and exchange with the potassium ion. So then facilitative transport. The fructose and mannose are transported across the brush border by the sodium dependent facilitative diffusion process requiring specific glucose transporter, that is GLUT5. That is the one of the glucose transporter for this facilitative transport. The same transport can also be used by glucose and galactose if the concentration gradient is favorable. Okay, with the same transporter, that is GLUT5, the glucose and galactose will also which will be transported. That means which will be absorbed. Thank you.